Whoa! And that's about when everyone thinks they've f***ed up. This here is the MSR Whisperlite, the most iconic liquid fuel camp stove that you can find on the market, period. For the past 5 to 10 years, liquid fuel stove have really fallen out of favor, to be honest, for more lighter and more compactable options. But the truth is that a liquid fuel stove is, in many cases, your best option for your backcountry camping adventures. And in this week's video, I'm gonna tell you why and when you would want to use a liquid fuel stove. And more importantly, I know that a lot of you are scared of using them because they have more parts, they're a bit more complicated. I'm gonna give you a step-by-step and show you how this works exactly so that you are confident out in the field. Probably the best application for a liquid gas camp stove is for winter camping. And winter camping is an art. It's an art because it's challenging, it requires a lot of knowledge, and only through experience can you learn to master this art. You have to take it one step at a time because it has inherent risks and you can find yourself in a really dangerous situation. And the real truth about winter camping is that your gear is in a lot of ways your lifeline. 4 years ago now, I went out in the Adirondacks with 3 of my really good friends and we went to climb the Great Range. In that trip, I was in charge of bringing the communal camp stove and I wanted to try something new. I wanted to move away from the liquid gas stove, but I knew that I couldn't bring a butane winter mix because it was gonna get minus 27, minus 30 degrees Celsius at night, and that tank was just not gonna perform. So I wanted to hook up my regular butane canister stove to a regular green propane tank. So I purchased an adapter for the propane tank, tested it out a few times here at home, and off we went into the mountains. We get to our first campsite after a long day of driving, a long day of hiking. We put the stove together, we cook, everything goes well. We go to sleep, and I didn't detach the stove to the propane tank overnight. I just left it as is in the vestibule because I knew we were gonna need it the next day. Next day comes around, and the stove is giving us a little bit of an issue, but it's working decently, so we do our things in the morning and off we go for the day. After like 8 or 9 hours of hiking all day long, hiking mountains, just exhausted, we have to make an emergency stop because I have 6 out of my 10 toes that are completely severely frostbitten. That's a whole other story in itself, but we set up camp in between 2 mountains on a ridge, and at this point we need to boil water so I can warm up and nurse my severe frostbites, but also so we can make water because we're completely out of water. There's no stream up there. The only way to make water is to melt snow, and the only way to cook is by melting snow, boiling it, and then rehydrating our food. And when we put the stove together, what we realize is that whenever you use propane often enough, there's going to be a little bit of condensation that happened. And because I didn't undo the stove the night before, our best estimate of the situation is that the condensation probably froze overnight and actually snapped the fuel line of the stove. So now we're at the top of a mountain. We've hiked for 9 hours straight. I have severe 6 frostbitten toes with no way of making water and no way of eating. When I'm saying that winter camping can be challenging and you can put yourself in really dangerous situations, these are the kind of situations I'm talking about. Luckily, Pierre-Antoine had, for whatever reason, decided to pack his small little BRS stove and it actually fit on the tank. And that's when I learned the hardest way that your gear is your lifeline out there. And using well-tested, renowned gear such as the MSR Whisperlite, that's been known as the most iconic liquid stove to always work and to be just extremely reliable out in the field, is extremely valuable in the wintertime. So in order to best explain how to use the liquid gas stove, I want to do a little bit of camp stove anatomy now. We're going to talk about canister stove, the thing that you're the most used to probably by now, and then I'm going to jump into the liquid camp stove so that you understand really well how they work so that you never fear using them in the field. When you look at a canister camp stove, very simply, of course, you have a gas canister, but inside the gas canister, you have fuel that's in a gas state, but more importantly, it is pressurized. So when you hook up a regular canister stove to it, you'll have a valve that's attached to that stove. When you open the valve, the pressurized gas travel up the camp stove and then you ignite it and you have a nice strong blue flame. The more you turn the valve, the more power you have, and that's how you basically consume that gas. Now, if we look at the liquid camp stove, you've got a lot more parts to understand. First off, you have your stove here. And your stove is pretty similar to what you might be used to, but the gas line is a little different because the gas line actually comes up into the flame and back down to where it actually feeds the flame. I'll explain that in a little bit. With that comes the fuel bottle, that in there you're gonna put liquid fuel. And then the last piece of the puzzle will be a pump that'll allow you to attach the camp stove to the fuel bottle. But more importantly, the pump is there so that you can pressurize the fuel bottle. The way this works is that you install the pump on top of the fuel bottle, and then you're gonna start pumping, 25, 30, 40 pumps. I like to do it more than not because the pressure that you create in the fuel bottle is what will really create the power of your flame and what is gonna make it last as long as possible. And now you've created the pressure so that when you turn on the valve that's on the pump, what the valve allows is for the fuel, because it's pressurized inside the fuel bottle, the liquid fuel now travels through the gas line, goes up and around, and now will land in that little cup at the bottom. In order for this stove to work, we have to find a way to change the liquid fuel and turn it into a gas. The way this will turn into gas is because the fuel line travels through the flame of the gas stove, that heat that's gonna get created will essentially boil the fuel, turn it into a gas state, and now will feed the stove a pressurized gas state fuel. Now you have a really strong and powerful flame. Now that you know all the names of the parts of everything, I wanna show you an example of how to use this exactly. First thing you're gonna wanna do obviously is assemble everything. So hook up the pump to the fuel bottle, pressurize the bottle by pumping it as much as possible, attach the fuel line of the camp stove to the pump, and set it up on a flat surface. You're gonna turn on the valve at the fuel pump, and you're gonna allow for some gas to travel through the line and fill up the little cup at the bottom. Once that little cup is filled, you turn off the valve at the pump, and now you're ready to light that little bit of fuel that you've put in there. When you light that fuel, this is when the flame will rise pretty high, and it can be a little scary at first. The purpose of that flame is to allow for the gas that's in that copper fuel line at the top that's in the flame to basically boil and turn into gas. And once the flame has almost died because it's consumed all of the gas, this is when you can return on the valve at the pump. You're gonna hear it really well that now it's not just liquid pooling at the bottom, it's pressurized gas that's coming out. You're gonna see the nice strong blue flame, and you're gonna be ready to cook. I put together last year a playlist of short videos of 31 winter camping tips in 31 videos. This is 15 years of experience and knowledge that I've dumped in there. Check it out, and I will see you, as always, in the next video. Peace.